Hi there, welcome to MIRFA Science Festival. My name is Sarah and I'll be giving a talk for educators and parents as well on some of the research findings of a project that I've been working on called the REACH project. So this talk is mostly aimed at those who are working with groups of children with additional needs, but educators in general, parents, and also anyone who's interested in science communication, psychon work. So the REACH project, the kind of main part of our ethos is that we think that science should be for everybody. And we think that when we talk about science communication, it's not outreach, we're not talking out at people, we're communicating with people. So there's a lot of different needs when it comes to communication, and we want to make sure that we are reaching children, young people, and everybody on the level that they need. So we developed the REACH project to try and work out what we can do better in terms of communicating when we're working with neurodiverse audiences. And just to clarify, when we're talking about neurodiverse, we're talking about children with ASD, ADHD, we could be talking about dyslexia as well. So anything that's considered not the neurotypical, which is not a great term, but not the neurotypical, neurodiverse audiences. So the way that I wanted to do this presentation today is I did another presentation yesterday for MIRFA Science Festival on environmental pollution. You can watch that YouTube video and see how this session works live, how it works with the classroom, how it works with our audiences. And today I'm going to be breaking down all of the different things in that session, how we tested these different facets of the REACH project, the feedback that we got from our learners, and try and give some insight into how we have designed our science communication, and hopefully to give some tips and tricks for other educators and science communicators working with these neurodiverse audiences. Okay. I should say as well, REACH is a project from Cardiff University and is funded by the Wellcome Trust. Okay. So during the REACH project, we came up with a few key concepts for effective communication. So some of the things that we found really important during our work were setting expectations, simple goal-oriented learning objectives, using symbols to communicate, multisensory approaches, keeping things short and sweet, repetition, and pulling it all together. So I'm going to go through examples of all of these different things and where we found these when we were conducting our project, and hopefully these will become a little bit clearer. So when we talk about setting expectations, and this is something that will probably be familiar to many educators, but maybe isn't so familiar to those of us doing science communication, and will definitely be familiar to anyone working with neurodiverse children or children with additional needs, is making sure that learners know what the appropriate rules are for your lesson, for your session, whatever you're doing, your activity. So do you want them to ask questions throughout the whole thing, or would you like a specific time for questions? What we found during our sessions was that it helped if we gave children a set expectation of when they could ask questions. So specifically, especially for children who maybe have ADHD or autism, that could be quite anxiety driving for them if they really wanted to tell you something, but they didn't know if they were allowed, or they wanted to contribute all the way to the session, but we needed to focus on something. So having expectations set up so that children know when it's appropriate to ask questions or how to ask those questions is something we found was important. So in an online setting, that might be using the raise your hand function or to post questions in the chat. And I would definitely say that for this presentation. If you have any questions, please post those in the comments, and I will try and get to them as soon as I can. There is a slight delay with the video, so if I don't see your question for a while, it could be just the delay, or I haven't noticed it yet, so I'll try to get to you as soon as I can. But yes, please, if you are watching live, feel free to ask questions at any point. Another thing we found in our sessions is having some kind of a talking tool to let children know when it was when they could ask questions, and when it was their turn. So some children may struggle with being able to sense the social cues to know when it's their turn to speak. So having something, especially if that thing is themed to our session. So if we're talking about atmospheric pollution, maybe we could have a little prop like a model lung or a cuddly toy lung or something like that. And if you're holding that, then you can talk. So having a talking tool is useful as well. So our next point is the simple goal-oriented learning objectives. So these are helpful for all learners, and we're really familiar with these in education settings, having learning objectives. That's something that is probably very familiar to most people. The way that we have phrased them in the project is having questions, and then using these then as kind of questions to check understanding later on. So we discuss the question, we then kind of bring that question back later on and kind of use that as a check for understanding as well. But another really important part of this is making these in a language that children can understand too. That's really crucial that we kind of found. Making sure they're goal-oriented. And another thing that we found that can be useful is asking children at the start what their answers to these questions are, what their initial viewpoints are on these questions, and then how that changes. And one thing that was really important to us was not only kind of coming and talking about the science, but kind of realizing that a change in what you already know, or adding to what you already understand about something, is this positive thing. And we wanted to be able to observe a change, but we wanted the children to be able to observe this positive change themselves too. So to be able to see that what they knew before and what they know after have changed, and they now understand more. Okay, so these are our key questions for this session. What is pollution? Why does pollution matter? And what we can do to help. So something that I also wanted to do through the REACH project was to use symbols. And this can be helpful for learning for children with dyslexia, especially having a lot of text on screen can be very off-putting. So instead of using the names for the different types of pollutions on this slide, I've used symbols instead to illustrate the points. And I will put the text up as well throughout the talk. But for a lot of children, having all of those names for pollution, of these different types of pollution, especially when they're quite intimidating long words, that might be visually too much. So we can simplify this with symbols, which might be easier for some of our learners, and then we can gradually add in that vocabulary as well through the session. So these slides have some examples of noise pollution on them. And I wanted to highlight these at the start of the REACH project. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to conduct in-person sessions, which was really fantastic. And then we had to pivot the project after the pandemic, and we initially tried an online project. We then realized that some of the groups we were working with maybe either lacked access to different technologies or lacked confidence using different programs like Zoom and Teams and that sort of thing. And a lot of children found that quite off-putting. They were already spending a lot of time doing their schoolwork online and possibly not enjoying it very much. So to have something else that they had to go online for felt like a bit of a chore. So we decided to completely pivot to a completely kind of hard copy version of the project, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But just to sort of highlight the importance of this kind of multisensory approach. When we're working in person, this is especially clear, but even when we're working online, where we can, trying to make things more multisensory. So in this PowerPoint, we're using sounds and videos and all of these different things, and lots of pictures and symbols to try and capture this multisensory approach. With the new kind of way that we're delivering the REACH project, we're not only distributing kind of booklets with the material for the sessions, but we're also giving families and schools all of the equipment they need to take part in experiments and activities that go alongside of the project as well. So we really wanted to make this multisensory, and one of the reasons for that is during these in-person sessions, right at the start of the project, up in the top left, we have a graffiti wall, and we asked children to draw or write some descriptions of the event and what they thought about it and the things they liked and they didn't like about it. And we kind of gave them creative reign to say whatever they wanted or write or draw whatever they wanted. And then we captured some of their responses in this word cloud. So the words that kind of came up most often are kind of in larger text, and then least often are in smaller text. And then we've color-coded the responses as well. So the blue words kind of give us positive adjectives for the event. So these are all the adjectives that children used. We've got in yellow, we've got kind of the words that kind of denote a change in behavior or learning. And in the kind of dark blue, we've got some topic words, so things that the children were telling us that they'd learned about. And then the pink words are kind of some of the most important ones, but also the most often kind of reported. And they were kind of sensory words, tactile words, words telling us about doing things and making things and how things felt when children were doing them. So we were getting a lot of feedback from our learners telling us that the things that they liked the best, the things they enjoyed the most were the things where they got their hands dirty, they got to play with Play-Doh, they got to play with slime, and the textures and sensations were really important to them. So we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that in our sessions. And I think that's an interesting thing moving forwards as well, that multi-sensory learning is also has also been shown to improve retention and to help aid learning. So this is a really important thing that we wanted to get right. Okay, so another of the key points is kind of putting things all together, and throughout the REACH project and throughout our sessions, I wanted to create, so we have the use of symbols again, so we're kind of using symbols to represent different parts of this topic, but we're also kind of creating these mind map kind of outlines, which have, again, the symbols, but they also kind of, around the topic, we have all of these different facets, and we'll come to that again at the end. So this is something that, because we are very much still in the data collection phase of the REACH project, so this is something that I'm still playing with and still trying to work out is getting the use of symbols right and getting this kind of mind mapping part of the project got right too. Another kind of really important part of the REACH project is our timing. So when we were working, when we were doing these in-person sessions, we found that children's attention span, talking to experts, we knew attention spans were probably going to be quite short. And we knew, especially for children with autism and ADHD, maintaining attention may be a challenge for them. When we worked with these groups, we were finding around 10 minutes, which is consistent with previous research, is around the right kind of period of time. So the way that we kind of punctuated our sessions is to have a theory section and then punctuate it with something like this video here. So using, again, these multimedia approaches as well to kind of bring that sensory interest in, but also to kind of punctuate the session. So we have 10 minutes of theory content and then a little break where we have a video or an activity or a question that children are working on. So this chunking has been very important too. Okay. So as I say, the presentation from yesterday, which goes through this presentation, so you can see me teaching that and everything that consists of, is available on YouTube. And we were talking about chunking again, so here we have another quick video break. But again, we're kind of another thing that was important is to break up these topics into separate topics. So we have the different types of pollution, but we're also kind of bringing that back to this slide again. So although we have different types of pollution, we're bringing that back to a central topic of pollution. Okay, another really important thing, we talked about the importance of sensory and tactile activities. So we tried to create as many interactive parts of the REACH project as we could. So lots of different things. So in this pollution example, we have an activity where children are simulating pollution by putting things like oils and sprinkles into water and trying to clean those up to simulate ocean pollution. So lots of kind of interactive and hands-on activities too. Okay. So as I say, you can see me go through this whole lesson if you want to and see me teach it live. This is just a whistle-stop tour to kind of highlight some of the key things that we wanted to get right with the REACH project. So repetition is another kind of important part of the way we structure these sessions. So we're always calling back to these key questions. Once we've kind of talked about different areas, we're coming back and saying, these are the things we've already covered, this is where we've been, and this is where we are heading now. And that kind of structure can be really important to lots of neurodiverse children, so but particularly children with autism, ASD. That can be really reassuring to kind of have a plan for the session so they know what we'll be doing and how we'll be doing it and in what order. Okay, so and then we have another kind of interactive activity to finish off the session, and to also kind of generate conversations at home and in school after the session's finished, to kind of get children thinking and talking about all of the concepts they've learned, give them a chance to go over all of that information that they've just taken in. And this is when we're talking about bringing it all together, mind mapping has been shown to be really effective. So instead of kind of seeing these sessions as a set of disparate facts, we're bringing them all in together and showing that they're part of a bigger narrative. And that can be really helpful to retaining this information, but also understanding to see it as a bigger narrative rather than, like I say, this set of disparate facts. Okay. So some of the key things that we have found have been really important to our project have been setting expectations, simple goal-oriented learning objectives, using symbols to communicate, multisensory approaches, keeping things short and sweet, repetition, and then pulling everything together. Some other things that have been incredibly helpful to us when designing the REACH project. So while we were kind of in the project design phase, we talked to a lot of experts working with children with ADHD and ASD and dyslexia. We also use the resources from Cardiff University. So we use the digital accessibility for neurodiverse audiences. Has been a resource that we've used a lot, which has been fantastic, and I would really recommend it. And you can find that on YouTube. We also use the Who Can Use website, which has been incredibly useful for all of our physical resources and online resources. So Who Can Use is a website where you can check how people are able to use your content both online, but this also applies to physical content as well. So you can check the contrast between your text and the background that it's on to ensure that it's going to be legible for people with dyslexia, but also a range of different visual impairments. That's really important. And you can check things like text size and font and things like this as well. So we've tried to be really mindful that our content is going to be easy to use for as many people as possible. Okay. And something that may be of interest to us in the future is there is some research suggesting that a low arousal color palette may be beneficial when it comes to room design and architecture. And it's not in the scope of our project to test this, but it would be interesting to see if a low arousal color palette is beneficial for learning for children neurodiverse audiences. So this presentation has been utilizing this low arousal color palette, so lots of natural colors. It looks pretty, not sure if it changes anyone's experience of it. But also when we're using these color palettes as well, we're checking the contrast between the text and the background to ensure that it's also appropriate for all of our users. Okay, so that brings us to the end for today. If you have any questions or comments, I'm just about to check the questions section just in case. But we're also still, looking for insights of educators, learners, and parents. So if there's anything that you like to share, so there's anything you disagree with that I've mentioned today, there's anything that you think that we could be doing better from the project, we would love to hear from you. So I'm just looking through the questions. Okay. So there's some really interesting questions here. Thank you, everyone. So do you think people are more likely to interact or ask questions online rather than in person? I think that really depends. In terms of the experience of the project, we found that our audiences weren't able to kind of access our online resources. So it's not something that we've kind of monitored and used for the project, but from my own experience. I think it really depends. I think the temptation when young people and children are working online is that there's lots of other distractions, and there aren't the kind of social cues to let them know that they need to be paying attention right now. And I think as educators, you kind of start to realize the importance of just that look to a student, to let them know that you see that they're fiddling around with a pencil case and not learning, and they need to be focusing right now. But yeah, I think it really depends on the person, and I'm sure that working online has really provided an advantage to some people to ask questions and voice opinions that they maybe wouldn't feel comfortable doing in person. But yeah, I think it's probably different for a lot of people. Yeah, okay. Does the introduction of sound work well? And that sound can be a problem in some situations. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's pitching it right, isn't it? So sound, especially for some of our learners with ASD, a lot of kind of loud sounds can be it can create quite a lot of anxiety, and that's obviously not what we want. But I do think if we're getting this right, it can kind of like using kind of an immersive soundscape can be a positive thing. But yeah, as I say, it's about pitching it right. But something that I think outside of this project that I found really useful is when we're talking about nature and teaching different the identification of different things in nature, is that we often don't think of using our ears to identify things. So teaching children bird sounds or insect sounds and that sort of thing can be something that's really kind of interactive and kind of immersive for them. So yeah, I like to use sound, but as with anything, it's pitching it. Yes. So using symbols, to try and use symbols that are common in everyday life. I think it's difficult when we are talking about subjects that, although they're a part of our everyday life, are maybe a bit less kind of commonly used in symbols and things. But generally, as a rule, yes, using symbols that are recognizable, and especially when in the physical resources for the REACH booklets, we broke down the sections into kind of activity times and experiments and used symbols to represent those. So where possible, we definitely like to use symbols that are recognizable, but the consistency is important as well. So if we're using the same symbol throughout the project, that's important. We can introduce a symbol and kind of have an associated meaning to it, as long as we're being fairly consistent with that. That's okay, but it's when we're confusing between symbols that I think that becomes a problem. And it can get quite confusing quite quickly, so it's still something that I'm trying to get feedback on and playing around with when I'm developing resources. Which multisensory activity would you say is the best and gets the best response from kids? This isn't something that I've kind of collected data on, but slime is always great. I like to do slime a lot, and it's quite versatile as well. We've done slime experiments where we're talking about mucus production and how the different colours of mucus might tell us about the health of people, and how mucus can protect our lungs and our respiratory system from different things. And we've also done slime when we're talking about leafhoppers and little tiny insects that make kind of little homes for themselves out of cuckoo spit, like out of slime. So, you know, we can use it in so many different contexts. So I think slime is a great one. And it's got lots of great kind of physics properties of its own. So you can always kind of, if someone's not kind of interested in biology, you can start talking about the physical properties of slime and the physics of that. I also really like, I make, well, before COVID, I would make my own Play-Doh a lot, and we did a lot of things like brain dissections, heart dissections, all that kind of good stuff. I think it's a great texture, and it's quite versatile. There's a lot you can do with it. But I don't think there are any rules. I think it's sort of be as creative as you possibly can be. And I think I don't think we'll ever kind of match the children on their level and be as creative as they can be. But you know, I think it's fun to just play around with these different activities. And I've had some great ones, but I've also had some that that went a bit pear-shaped. And yeah, I think it's just fun trying all these different things out. But as much of a cliche as it is, slime seems to go down fantastic every single time. Right, great. I don't think there are any more questions, but thank you so much everyone who contributed a question. I really appreciate it. And I always think it's more interesting when we're kind of having a discussion rather than me just talking to you. So yeah, thank you so much everyone who did tune in live. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Merthyr Science Festival and have a lovely rest of your weekend and enjoy this gorgeous weather too. Thanks very much.